that a cue?
There we go.
Good May morning, and welcome to the Universalist Church Online, in which love is the spirit. We are glad you are here, whether you're joining us from about West Hartford, Connecticut, or anywhere in the world. I'm Jim, one of the trustees on the Universalist Church Board. If you're attending worship through our YouTube live stream, we invite you to connect with us more deeply. Visit our webpage to learn more. That's www.westhartforduu.org. There, you can use the contact page to get onto our mailing list or let us know how you'd like to get involved. Our electronic communications are the best way for us to stay connected. We look forward to helping you become part of the Universalist Church no matter where you live. Online worship can be wonderful, yet technology sometimes fails us. We appreciate your graciousness when that happens. Today's order of service will appear in the Zoom chat box and the YouTube description. Our Zoom fellowship time will begin shortly after worship ends. If you're attending through Zoom today, please stay online, even if you need to step away for a short break, to connect with one another. If you're part of our Zoom community, but watching on YouTube, you can always jump back onto Zoom for fellowship after the service ends. Creating and strengthening our connections with one another is so important while we wait for the pandemic to end. These online fellowship times can help us do that. Now, please take a moment to turn off your email and other apps, put the keyboard away, and settle in for worship.
If you have a home chalice, please light it with me. And let's speak together the words of our affirmation, our covenant. It's in the description and the chat. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Our time for all ages this morning will be told by Dan Bouchard.
Take a moment to imagine our church, the actual church, the building. For lots of us, it's been a long while since we've been here in person. Think about all the rooms and the spaces, not just this sanctuary. Do you have a favorite place in this church? Maybe you love Fisk Hall, holding the promises of friendship, warm drinks, and snacks after service. Maybe it's someplace cozier, like the meditation room or the parlor. Now take a moment to imagine, what do you think those places are looking like now, after a year of church online? Are you picturing closed rooms with dust cloths over all the furniture? Maybe in a couple of those rooms. But this spring especially, the church is reminding me of one of my favorite story characters, the mole, from Kenneth Graham's The Wind in the Willows. I think of him often this time of year, and of the first passage in that book. The mole had been working very hard all the morning, spring cleaning his little home. First with brooms, then with dusters, then on ladders and steps and chairs, with a brush and a pail of whitewash, till he had dust in his throat and eyes, and splashes of whitewash all over his black fur, and an aching back and weary arms. Spring was moving in the air and in the earth below and around him, penetrating even his dark and lowly little house with its spirit of divine discontent and longing. Well, just like the mole taking care of his home, there is lots of care going into our church home too. Have you ever put your hard work and your care and your love into a place? Sometimes we might just be cleaning. Sometimes we might take it a step further and break out the paint like Mole in his pail of whitewash. There's certainly a lot of that going around on our church this spring. Sometimes we might even go beyond that. Have you ever taken all of that hard work and care and love to create a new space altogether? A space for a specific purpose. Maybe it was a nest just for you, where you could read books all through a rainy day. Perhaps it was a dining table with tea service for 4 stuffed animals, where everything was arranged just right to make all of your guests feel welcome. Or maybe a small table in a corner of a room with a chalice and a comfortable chair, a place just for you to light a candle and think about things. Well, there are things like that happening around here too, like in some of our classrooms. They were designed in another time for different people. We want to make sure that when we come back together, our church is ready for us. By sharing with the space our hard work and our care and our love, we are not only keeping our building safe and in good repair and ready to welcome all who enter. We're taking the time to share our identity with it and our hopes for what our world should look like, so that our church doesn't just make a roof for us. It reflects back to us all of our own congregation's spirit of divine discontent and longing, and helps us to channel it into living our principles in the world. Please join in singing our Doxology.
are grateful for all the ways in which you support us and one another by offering your time, talent, and treasure to this community. You help us to serve the members, friends, and the wider world of this congregation. As part of that service, we share our general offering each week with organizations that are in harmony with our values, who do work in the world that brings us ever closer to creating the beloved community. The organizations that we share our plate with now are organizations that you have recommended. We have places that we will be sharing our plate with through the summer based on your recommendations. And at some point in the late summer, we'll be asking you for some more options too. For today, we're going to share our plate with Hartford Bags of Love. Hartford Bags of Love was created by Tiernan Cabot when he was 9 years old as a way to provide basic daily essentials to people experiencing homelessness. They give away things from soap and socks to sleeping bags. They're raising funds to build little free pantries around Hartford County so that anyone can find food right when they need it. You can find them online at hartfordbagsoflove.org. Please use the links in the chat, the description, and on our website to make your donation to our offering. Your generosity is much appreciated and makes a difference. Thank you.
Spring has now unwrapped the flowers. Day is fast reviving. Life in all her growing powers toward the light is striving. Gone the iron touch of cold, winter time and frost time. Seedlings working through the mold now make up for lost time. Herb and plant that winter long slumbered at their leisure, now bestirring green and strong, find in growth their pleasure. Overwhelmed with beauty fills, gold the green enhancing. Flowers make glee among the hills, set the meadows dancing.
As we begin our time of prayer and meditation, I have a couple of things to share with you on behalf of members of the congregation. Joe W.'s brother, Sam, died on Friday, April 23rd in North Carolina after a long illness. Let us hold Joe and Sam and their entire family in our hearts. Longtime church member Sally Kay died peacefully at home on April 23rd, and she and her husband, Jack, have been members of this congregation for decades. Sally will be much missed. There's a family memorial service for Sally happening, and we'll place her ashes in the memorial garden as well. Let us hold Jack and Sally and their entire family in our thoughts and our prayers as well. Please join with me in a moment of prayer. Let us give thanks to one another, to all that helps us live, to existence itself. Let us give thanks for the blessings of difference and unity and wonder. Let us give thanks in this moment, in each of our places, in this community scattered around the world. This gift of gratitude reminds us, no matter where we are, no matter how far apart we might be, of our interconnectedness, our interdependence. Through our gratitude, we tell truth about our lives. We honor our bonds. We make holy our relationships. As we give thanks, let us remember that there are people and places for whom gratitude may be difficult now. In our gratitude, let us also commit to finding ways, great and small, that we may ease one another's suffering. Make it possible for all to be well, so that gratitude may flow easily from every heart. Let us give our thanks to this earth, its plants, its creatures, for providing us sustenance, beauty, and companionship in this life. Let us give our thanks to the people of this earth for community, for love, for the work of creating justice. And let us give our thanks to the indefinable, the indescribable, all the mysteries of being, for the fact that we are at all. Let us take a moment together in stillness. May the prayers of our hearts and the prayers of our words, may they find expression, may they find answers, may they find fullness, and may we be grateful for all the ways in which life allows us to be, for the ways in which we help one another to become better, for the places that help us to thrive. May it be so. Amen.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
We have 3 readings today. The first is adapted from Open Spaces, Sacred Places by Tom Stoner and Carolyn Rapp. Quietly, beneath the drumbeat of global dysfunction and discouragement, there is emerging a shift in imagination. This shift demonstrates a burgeoning realization that a place intentionally connected to nature can be a gift that calms the soul, replenishes the spirit, and rekindles a sense of community. The seed for this shift comes from our ability to tap into an inner sacred place and to have an open heart. We visited an enclosed garden in the center of London. To enter, we had to pass through a dark red brick arch. We instantly felt as though we had left the city behind and had entered a place of serenity. This quiet park had survived the Blitz during World War II and the times of terror that followed. Plaques on benches revealed how the healing power of nature had given the residents a few moments of peace in a city besieged. We realized then and there that the space was much more than just a public garden. We had an epiphany. Certain spaces can transform you. Certain spaces are sacred. Our second reading is adapted from Four Lost Cities, A Secret History of the Urban Age by Annalee Newitz. 1,000 years ago, huge pyramids and earthen mounds stood where East St. Louis sprawls today in southern Illinois. Majestic urban architecture towered over the sticky mud of the Mississippi River floodplains, and elevated walkways wound between densely packed neighborhoods, public plazas, and outlying farms. The city we call Cahokia became an immigrant sanctuary, its neighborhoods bursting with people drawn from cultures all across the southern United States. At the city's apex in the year 1050, the population exploded to as many as 30,000 people. It was the largest pre-Columbian city in what later became known as North America, and bigger than Paris at the time. Cities are ongoing social experiments, and the remains of ancient homes and monuments describe how people tried to bring diverse groups together with a shared purpose, to nourish and entertain each other, to overcome political conflict and climate catastrophe. They also describe our failures, the authoritarian slave-driving leadership, the bad civil engineering, and the laws that limited many people's access to resources. Our forebears' eroded palaces and villas warn us about how communities can go wrong, but their streets and plazas testify to all the times we built something meaningful together. Our final reading is a poem. It is Enough to Enter by Todd Boss. It is enough to enter the Templar halls of museums, for example, or the chambers of churches, and admire no more than the beauty there, or remember the graveness of stone, or whatever. You don't have to do any better. You don't have to understand the liturgy or know history to feel holy in a gallery or a presbytery. It is enough to have come just so far. You need not be opened any more than does a door standing ajar.
Gonna build a mountain from a little hill. Gonna build a mountain, least I hope I will. Gonna build a mountain up the mountain slope. Gonna build a daydream, gonna see it through. Gonna build a mountain and a daydream, gonna make them both come true. Gonna build a heaven from a little hell. Gonna build a heaven, and I know darn well, if I build my mountain with a lot of care and take my daydream up the mountain, heaven will be waiting there. Gonna build a mountain from a little hill. Gonna build a mountain, least I hope I will. Gonna build a mountain, gonna build it high. I don't know how I'm gonna do it, only know I'm gonna try. Gonna build a mountain, gonna build it high. I don't know how I'm gonna do it, only know I'm gonna try.
Over the past months, as we've been moving back to leading worship from here, I've heard from those of you who have come in to help lead worship in the sanctuary just how much it means to be back in the building, especially in our sanctuary. I have seen smiles and tears of relief and joy, and some for sorrow as well, for just how long it's been since we've all been here, since this space held you, held us the way it's supposed to do. Ted and Dan and myself are all very excited to be back in here. We know that the bell choir and the other ensembles are looking forward to returning. Those of us who have been in the sanctuary leading worship for all of you, well, we cannot wait until you are able to be here and join us. But it's not because church must happen in a building. We've proved that since Sunday, March 15th, 2020. We've been doing church scattered across Connecticut and far beyond since that day. We've learned how to sustain our community beyond any particular place. But we've also found, I think, that having a place together matters, even when it's just the parking lot for a physically distanced concert, or to have a place where we can keep our food ministry going so that we can help the people who need that support too. Buildings like ours and sanctuaries like this one serve a purpose. And I think it's sad when our spaces can't fulfill their purposes. This is true of all human-made spaces. We don't just create things without a purpose. We make private spaces and public spaces and everything in between. We make homes and plazas, religious buildings, gardens, healing places, entertainment spaces, civic buildings. The list is long. And we build these things because we are creative, because we like to leave something of ourselves behind where we've been, because we need a place to do a thing, whether for pleasure or need. We build to serve a purpose. And sometimes we are more successful at expressing that purpose than others. In 4 Lost Cities, Annalee Newitz writes, "Cities are ongoing social experiments, and the remains of ancient homes and monuments describe how people tried to bring diverse groups together with a shared purpose. to nourish and entertain one another, to overcome political conflict or climate catastrophe. They also describe our failures: authoritarian leadership, bad civil engineering, and laws that limit people's access to resources. Our forebears' eroded palaces and villas warn us about how communities can go wrong, but their streets and plazas testify to all the times we've built something meaningful together. Cahokia, that pre-Columbian city in southern Illinois that she's writing about, was a marvel of public and private spaces, filled with immigrants and locals, built with purpose. Farms next to neighborhoods where the farmers lived, elevated walkways to avoid the muds and the floods, enormous plazas, nearly 350 times the size of a football field, for public events. The Native Americans who made that place around 1000 CE were intentional about the purpose, the design, and how they used every part of that landscape. And then, at points along the way, how people used those spaces changed. What they meant to them changed. Some of those spaces fell out of use. Many of them were remade to become newly useful again. This is the work of placemaking. As Diane, one of our members and a skilled designer herself, calls it, placemaking is more than just construction or decoration, though both of those are a part of it. Placemaking is a way of carefully considering how to create a space that has meaning. I think about it like this. We make sacred spaces and meaningful places through 4 steps. First, we determine their life-giving purpose. Second, we design their function to support that purpose. Third, we decorate them to enhance that purpose. And fourth, we invite people in to fulfill that purpose. We determine, we design, we decorate, and we invite. And once people come in, that's when the spaces really can become sacred, meaningful. Sometimes it happens organically, over years of growth and change and use. From Open Spaces, Sacred Places by Tom Stoner and Carolyn Rapp. We visited an enclosed garden in the center of London. To enter, we had to pass through a red brick arch. We instantly felt as though we had left the city behind and entered a place of serenity. Inside, towering plane trees canopied little paths that meandered throughout the garden. This quiet park had survived the Blitz during World War II and the times of terror that followed. Plaques on benches revealed how the healing power of nature had given the residents a few moments of peace in a city besieged. We realized then and there that the space was much more than just a public garden. We had an epiphany. Certain spaces can transform you. Certain spaces are sacred. Sometimes spaces have the chance to be sacred and meaningful because people think and imagine and discuss and plan and then build with all of those steps in mind. Determining, designing, decorating, and inviting. It's when we invite, when people can come into those spaces, to inhabit them, to use them, that's when that meaning, that sacredness becomes real. Even without ceremonies or words, if we come open to the experience of a place that is made that way, we can discover the holiness that is part of the place itself. Todd Boss writes, "It is enough to enter the Templar halls of museums, for example, or the chambers of churches, and admire no more than the beauty there, or remember the graveness of stone, or whatever. You don't have to do any better. You don't have to understand the liturgy or know history to feel holy in a gallery or presbytery. It is enough to have come just so far. You need not be opened any more than does a door standing ajar." All of our readings today come from different points of view about place. They talk about the importance of gardens or cities or monuments and grand structures. They also talk about the inadequacy of these places too. A garden might provide respite, but it will not save us from the violence of war. In cities, we explore what it means to be human together on a grand scale, creating beauty and culture and newness. But cities also often have inequality and conflict and, frankly, some bad planning. Holy structures inspire us and ask us to look beyond our daily lives. But if we can't come in with our souls opened, even just a touch, they won't have any effect. And if we don't make sure that our holy spaces speak to who we are, they will also fail. We need to be willing to meet that life-giving purpose in a place, and the place must have a life-giving purpose for us to meet. So I'd like for you to think for just a moment about the places that have felt most special or sacred or meaningful to you. When I think about these spots, I think of the San Lu Chinese Garden and Tea House in Portland, Oregon, or the Stream Gardens and Chapel at Cornell, the halls and galleries of the Art Institute of Chicago, the ruins of the ancient cathedral of the Rock of Cashel in Ireland, but also things much closer to home, the sanctuaries and gardens of each of the congregations I've served, especially this space, and our memorial garden too. Each of these places helped me take that bit of openness I came with and expanded it. It took my door that was ajar and blew it wide open. These places have helped me to feel safe or inspired or peaceful and connected. I imagine that you have spaces like this for yourselves. I hope that this space is one of those places for you, or can become that way. In this spirit, we here who have been working in the church have become mole in the wind and the willows. We are preparing our home for everyone who is going to come back in. We've taken this time while very few people are using our sacred space to do some placemaking. We've been thinking about a few places in the church, especially on the second floor. We've been discussing and determining their life-giving purpose. We've been designing their function to support that purpose. We're in the process of figuring out how we'll decorate them to enhance that purpose. And soon, we hope, we'll be inviting you all in to fulfill that purpose. Our goal is to enliven some of these spaces at the church. The children's library and the classrooms, the entry hall into the sanctuary, even creating a new meditation room and hallway from the old lounge on the second floor. In order to do this, not just to throw some paint up and change out some furniture, but in order to figure out how to make these spaces live, be ready for us, we had to think about the purpose of these places and what would make them into spaces that are inspiring and safe, gracious, and sacred. We asked, what would make our religious education spaces inviting and educational, offer a sense of sanctuary and safety, make room for meaning and peace and joy? We asked, could this library become not just a place to find books and read, but also a place of peace and playfulness? Could it become a place for discovery and wonder? Could we add to what others had built in order to renew its purpose? As Dan said, some of our spaces, our classrooms and our library, for example, were created for other people in other times. How might we make these spaces created now for us in this moment? After we'd done all this thinking, those of us who have been working on it said, yes, we can do this. We can make these spaces our spaces, honoring what they have been before and making them become something that is powerful and true and necessary now. And when it's done, we're pretty sure it's going to be a draw for children and families when we all come back into the building. I had been wondering for a while, what is the purpose of the lounge? And I couldn't really think of one aside from having just another meeting space that's casual with some couches. But what I wanted to know was, how could that space become purposeful? And after some discussions and spending time in there, I began to think it might function better as a meditation and small group discussion room, allowing for a hallway so that we could get to the offices behind that space, no matter who is in the meditation room at the same time. That way we have the ability to access the archives and what might turn into another staff office someday. Of course, I only figured that out because I knew there were offices back there. It took me probably a year to learn that. Thinking about the purpose of the room, the purpose of the space, helped me figure out how we might use it for a purpose. But as I've been thinking about the purpose of our second floor rooms, and in conversation with a whole bunch of people around what that might be, how we might bring those purposes to life, I've also been thinking about this more broadly. In The Architecture of Happiness, Alain de Botton writes, "Belief in the significance of architecture is premised on the notion that we, for better or worse, we are different people in different places. It's based on the conviction that it is architecture's task to render vividly to us who we might ideally be." That's what we hope for by doing this placemaking, by considering carefully what these spaces are for, how we can make them lean into that and be successful in creating it, and then asking you to come in and make it real. Placemaking as a thought project or as a design puzzle, that's fun, but its purpose is actually to remind us of who we might ideally be. Our church building is part of how we inspire ourselves to fulfill our covenants, to live our values. And that is really why this place matters so much. It holds us, our dreams, our visions, our possibilities, as well as our common daily life. So how we enliven this church building and the gardens and the space, even the parking lot, how we keep it sacred, that's all wonderful to prepare. But it doesn't become real until you are here, with your hearts and your minds and your spirits open, even just a little bit. And I am so looking forward to the day when you are back here, where you belong, and where the building needs you to be in order to fulfill its purpose, and in order for it to help us fulfill ours. May it be so. May it be soon. Amen. Please, join me in speaking our unison benediction. Engage with the world in peace. Have courage. Hold on to what is good. Return to no person evil for evil. Strengthen the faint-hearted. Support the weak. Help the suffering. Honor all beings.